He woke up early. Silence. No thoughts. No desires. The world outside the window was created by erasing it. Only the gray mush of the sky and branches scraping the glass remained. He got up not because he wanted to. His body simply knew that it was necessary. His soul was silent. He walked down the street looking at the faces of the people passing by. Some were in a hurry, some were laughing, some were talking on the phone. Everyone seemed busy with life. But he wasn't. He felt empty inside, as if someone had blown the air out of him. Pointless. Everything was pointless. Work, conversations, even food. Why? Was the only question that was dulling in my head. Why live if everything is repeating itself? If everything has already happened? If feeling is just chemistry and meaning is fiction? And then he met an old man on a bench. He was feeding pigeons and watching the leaves fall. Just watching. Not with longing, not with pleasure. With attention. As if there was some hidden answer in each fall. "Does everything seem empty?" the old man asked, not taking his eyes off the sky. He was surprised. He didn't say anything about it. "Yes," was all he answered. "That's good," said the old man. "When you see meaninglessness, you really look for the first time." Why is it good? The meaning of this word is not something external. It is not given. It is chosen, or I will design it. Or they simply find it in the little things. It is not loud. It is like this leaf. The old man picked up a fallen maple leaf, silent, but real. He left without answering. But that evening, for the first time in a long time, he made himself some tea. No reason, just because he wanted to taste it. The meaning did not return, but a crack appeared in the void, and sometimes that's enough. If everything seems meaningless, maybe you're just standing in front of a blank canvas, and for the first time in your life, a brush is in your hand. Days passed. He still didn't know why he was waking up, but he no longer waited for someone to give him an answer. Instead, he began to observe. He noticed the way the sun streaked across the floor, the way the cat curled into a perfect circle in the alley, the way the boy on the bus clutched a crumpled toy to his chest. These things made no sense, but they were there. And that was enough. He started writing, not thoughts, but sensations. How the rain smells, how a step sounds in an empty entryway, how silent it is, that it hurts. The lines were crooked, but alive. For the first time in a long time, he felt not just emptiness, but silence. He didn't immediately understand the difference between them. Emptiness demands that you fill it, and silence simply waits for you to hear yourself. One day he saw the old man again, still on the same bench, still with the same pigeons. "Well, how is it?" he asked without turning around. "I don't know, it still seems strange, but I started to see." The old man smiled. "Then you are no longer where you were. The point is not to find the goal. The goal is a mirage. The point is the look. If you look, you are alive." They were silent together, without awkwardness, as if self-silence were a conversation. Then he left. But now his steps were not mechanical. He was not walking somewhere, but through the day, through the world, through himself. Sometimes he still woke up in emptiness. Sometimes it seemed like everything was just dust again. But now he knew. Even dust danced in the rays of light, and sometimes that was enough to stay, to move on. When everything seems pointless, it's not a mistake. It's a pause. And maybe it's in that pause that you finally hear your own voice. Not the one that screams, but the one that whispers. One morning he woke up and felt no heaviness, no pain, no joy, just clarity. The air was cool, and snow was falling slowly outside. There was something precise about the simplicity, as if the world was saying, "You are here. That is enough." He took his notebook and wrote, "I don't look for more meaning. I live, and that's enough for something to appear." He could no longer fill the void. He began to live in it. He did not run from loneliness, did not pretend to be confident, did not look for excuses. He simply was. He spoke when he wanted. He was silent when words were not needed. He made tea. He listened to music. Sometimes he caused a neighbor to carry a bag. Sometimes he cried at night, without shame. And then one day he noticed a girl in a cafe. She was just sitting by the window and looking at the street. There was that very silence in her gaze. Not sadness, not expectation, transparency. He approached her. "You look as if you are looking at the meaning." She came back and smiled slightly. "And you, it seems, have finished." "Almost," he replied. "Now I just watch. Sometimes that's enough." They sat next to each other, not in a hurry, not looking for words. And in this beginning of silence, something warm spread its wings, something that didn't need an explanation. This is how a new chapter begins, not with a goal, not with a discovery, with being present, with that quiet yes to yourself, to this day, to this meeting. And suddenly, everything doesn't seem meaningless anymore, because you don't wait for the world to explain itself. You just are. Spring came unnoticed. It wasn't considered a day. He just heard water dripping from the roof one day. It smelled of earth. The air was full of sounds he hadn't heard before. PPP sounded almost like a question. Life, as it turned out, did not return. It never left. It was just that before he was somewhere deep inside himself, in the shadows. And now he is renewed, not in the light, but in the presence. He did not become a different person. He did not find the truth, but he learned to be. In his notebook he wrote, "Meaning is not an answer. It is a path you do not run away from." He met my girlfriend again, on a bench in the park, under the first greenery of the trees. "I thought spring was hope," she said, "but now I understand it's about decoration, about the fact that there was winter, and that's part of the journey too." "Are you still looking?" he asked. She nodded. "And you?" He thought about it. "No, I'm not looking anymore. I'm watching." "And how?" "Sometimes it's scary, sometimes it's beautiful. But the main thing is that I'm not alone in this." They sat in the shade of the trees, and there was no need to talk more between them. There was only the soft light, the breath of the earth, and this simple human thing nearby. When everything seems meaningless, it is a call, not to escape, but to return, to yourself, to life as it is, without promises, without a great goal, just you, your breath, and the morning in which you can again choose to leave. Summer came quietly, without fanfare. He didn't notice when he stopped looking at the calendar. The days just flowed, not up, not down, not success, not failure, just forward. He began to draw, not because he could, but because he felt it. He drew a cup with a crack, a stone by the road, someone's old boots. People said that these were little things, but it was in them that he now saw the essence. Each thing was a testimony. Everything that existed said, "I was, I am." One day in the library, he came across a line written in the hand of a stranger in the margins of old books. "We don't live to find meaning. We live to become something that will find meaning itself." He closed the book and smiled, not because he understood everything, but because he was no longer afraid of not understanding anything. The girl he was sitting with in the park now sometimes came to him just to be quiet. She was still looking for more, and he still didn't know how this path would end. But now it didn't seem important. Being there was already an answer. "You've changed," she said one day. "No," he replied. "I just stopped hiding from who I've always been." "And who are you?" He looked out the window where the leaves were quietly rustling in the wind. "I am the one who breathes, the one who watches, the one who stays. And if one day everything seems empty again, he will not doubt. He will know. Emptiness is not an enemy. It is simply a place where you can start all over again, without haste, without loud words, with a cup of warm tea, a light wind in the window, and a feeling that everything, both meaninglessness and beauty, can be part of one, bright, real life." The autumn days became changeable and the rain became more frequent. People hurried, wrapped themselves in scarves, complained about the dampness, but he no longer complained. He watched the water flow down the glass, the leaf fall to the ground and remain, without a fight, without regrets. He started writing letters, not letting go, just writing. To people who were long gone from his life, to himself as he had been, to himself as he could have become. The world was the same, but something had changed in it. Or maybe he had become more attentive. One of the letters began like this: "You search as if there was a key somewhere, but sometimes the door is just unlocked. Just push it, and it turns out that all this time you were standing inside." He didn't know where the words came from. He didn't believe there was anything worthwhile inside before. Now he didn't look for proof. He was just changing. It was getting colder in the park. The girl didn't come anymore, but he didn't wait. He knew, everyone comes when they have to, and I'll leave when I need to. There was no drama in this, just the path. One evening he passed a shop window and suddenly saw his reflection. An ordinary face, not young, inconspicuous, but in his eyes, peace, not from victory, but from acceptance. He smiled to himself, for the first time truly. When everything seems pointless, don't resist. Sit down, listen to the rain. Let's see how someone helps you put on your jacket. Feel a warm cup in your hands. These are not great truths, they are tiny anchors. And maybe they are the meaning, not loud, not eternal, but real. Winter returned the way silence returns, unnoticed. First, a light frost on the glass, then the air that smells of fragility, then the city, softened by the snow as if the whole world was wrapped in silence. He was no longer afraid of winter. He lived in the rhythm of his movement, without hurrying, without fighting. In the morning, he made coffee. Sometimes he drew, sometimes he just looked out the window. Not because he had to do something, but because it was good for him to just be. In his letters, he no longer asks questions. Now there are only observations. Today, a lone raven sat on a lamppost. He didn't scream, he just was. That was enough. He began to smile at strangers, not because he was especially kind. He just no longer felt like everyone was a stranger. Everyone was on a journey. Everyone was carrying something inside. And maybe some of them were going through winter too. The one inside. One day, when a thin, fine snow came, he returned to that same low bench. It was empty. No pigeons, no old man, just a white blanket and one footprint leading into the distance. He sat down, and I realized the old man was not a teacher, but a reminder. That meaning is not a thing that can be captured, a state that can be entered through silence, through pain, through loneliness, through honesty. He took out a notebook and wrote, "Now I know, meaning is not something that answers. It is something that listens. And if you stay, it comes, without words, without fanfare. It just sits down next to you like snow on your shoulder." And in that sitting, in that snowy silence was the whole story. The story of how a man lost his meaning and then realized he was never lost. He was just waiting, in the quietest place, where the heart no longer searches loudly, but simply says, "I am here." Another year has passed, and it doesn't count anymore. Now he lived in a house where the walls were not decorated with great paintings, but with simple drawings, a cup, a tree, a window. Everything that had once seemed nothing became signs, reminders that the meaning was not in magnification, but in reasonable understanding. He no longer wrote letters, only left short notes in the kitchen, on the mirror, on the windowsill. Sometimes for himself, sometimes for someone who would come later. He didn't know who it would be, but they knew. If someone found the words, they wouldn't be alone. One day they came to him. It was a girl, the same one, only older. There was no longer an anxious search in her gaze. Now there was recognition, as if they had been walking down different roads for a long time so that one day they would meet not to explain everything, but simply to follow the silence. They sat together by the window, silent. It started snowing outside. "You know," she said, "I thought everything was going to be brilliant, but there was no clarity. The need for it just disappeared." "That you came to a place where you can't know," he replied, "where you can just be." She smiled, not like before. No anticipation, no tension. "I brought you something," she said, and took out a piece of paper. On it was a line. "Meaning is not knowledge. It is a warm hand placed next to you when you thought you were alone." He read and manifested. Not because he understood more, but because he understood we can go further together. And when winter came again, and again the gray snow fell on the roof, he knew. If there was a meaning, it was in this. In staying when you want to leave. In noticing when everything is silent. In addition to share tea, silence, and the day, it does not require that it becomes something great. Just a day, just you, just life. This is enough. They did not live loudly. They didn't make big plans. They didn't write manifestos. They didn't try to stay up to date with history. Their home was warm not from the wallpaper but from the company, from the cups, out of order but always at hand, from the books, open in the middle, from the presence soft as the light at the end of the day. Sometimes they walked together in the rain. Sometimes, each in their own way, they were silent. Sometimes, he woke up before her and simply watched her spit, not with longing, with gratitude, for the fact that it was possible to do this, just be near, and that was already an answer. He was still writing, now not to find himself, but to leave a path for someone who would one day also feel, everything is meaningless. Here is one of his last entries. You think you're lost, but maybe you just found yourself in the center where meaning is not spoken but revealed. Take your time. Drink water. It's wonderful how the old dog looks on you. The meaning will come, but not as knowledge, as a soft light. And you will understand, all this time you were there. You just needed to shut up. One day, after many years, he left, quietly as he lived, without fuss, without goodbye. He simply closed his eyes and disappeared not into the darkness, but into peace, into that very silence with which it all began. She stayed. She stood by the window for a while. Then she went to his desk. The last note was lying on it. One line. Life is not about meaning. It's about being the light when everything seems to be yours. She didn't cry. I just made tea. The window opened, and let the wind carry this phrase into the world. Maybe someone will hear. Maybe someone will also stop in meaninglessness one day and suddenly feel, you are not alone, you are here, and that is enough. Spring has come again. Just like then, quietly, without announcement. A light wind touched the curtains. Soft light poured in the window. She lived alone, but not lonely. Everything in the house remains in its place. His drawings, his cup, his notebooks, not as relics, as parts of the population, as an extension of what did not disappear, but simply became invisible. Sometimes people came. They sat on that very lower bench, some by chance, some because they had heard about him, some because they were lost. She didn't explain anything to them. She just poured tea. She sat next to him and was silent, like he once did. And then she began to speak, a simple voice without lecturing. Do you feel the emptiness? This is not the end. This is the beginning. The meaning is not lost. He spat in the silence. Stay. Look. Listen. Sometimes to find the light, you don't have to go forward. You just have to keep your eyes open. And one of them smiled one day, not because he had found the answer, but because he was no longer afraid of its outcome. That's how time is. And if one day you yourself find yourself in a place where everything seems meaningless, do not rush to run. Make sure. Listen. Feel the ground under your feet. Look how the sky moves, how dust dances in a beam, how someone nearby simply is. And maybe you too will find this knowledge, without words. There is no need to search for meaning. It must be shared. And then on the simplest day you realized, you're already home.